Guys, on this episode we've got Didi and Jake over here who's going to talk to me about certain challenges that they go through on a daily basis. We kind of do this every now and then, but I thought it'll be fun to share this one with you, and so we're doing this as part of the vlog. Mind you, today is a very, very windy day here in Melbourne. We've got our panels falling over all over the place, but that's because our ceiling game is not on point. But we're gonna work through this in the next couple of months, and hopefully we'll do something about it. But anyway, stay tuned because this conversation is gonna be the one that you've been waiting for. Guys, this time I've got Didi and Jake joining me in this episode. We're going to talk about mainly the challenges that we face, and usually we do this on a one-on-one session between myself and each of the team members. But I thought it's going to be fun to share this one with you, and I thought it'll be good to have someone from a design perspective. Jake is one of our designers, and Didi from a project management perspective, because then he deals with the client-facing type of work most of the time. So I think it'll be a great combination, and it'll be fun to share it with you in terms of the type of conversations that we usually have as a team. So without further ado, we're going to start with Jake.
All right.
What type of questions do you have? Okay,
so my first question is, how do you go about dealing with clients that are highly critical of our initial design concepts?
Yeah. So I guess over time I've learned that before starting the design itself, or before starting the concept itself, it would be really good for you to understand their perspective. And your perspective and their perspective could be really, really different, because you're coming from, I'm just trying to picture myself as a new person coming into their business, trying to understand what they do, and trying to present, I guess, something visual that represents that. That is not a very easy thing to do, and oftentimes people don't really understand that. But I guess customers would really appreciate it if you try to eliminate risks from the upfront, and that's really just asking questions. Really asking questions, trying to qualify what is it that they're looking for, and over time, I guess the concepts that you present would always follow that specific guideline that you initially, I guess, found out during that discovery process. So if you have that discovery process, I think there's less risk for you to present something that's not aligned to what they want to achieve at the first time. So because what that means is, well, you have reasons on why you do it. Let's say you've done it in this specific manner. The reason why you've done it is because in the interviews that you had with them originally, there are these points that made you do this. So I think when you have those kind of reasons based on what they originally needed and based on what was agreed upon, then I think there's less risk for them to be like super critical about your work that's been presented. But let's say if they happen to be very critical, then you would question back, like I'm just picturing that you would have done that discovery process previously. But if you haven't, let's say if you've done that and there's still all of these criticisms, but you feel like you've delivered something that was based on the original requirement, then I think it's a good time to ask and challenge them, where you go, look, here's what we've discussed originally, and you've agreed to that, because in an open discussion they would have given their 2 cents as well. And then now you're thinking that it's not working. Like, what is it exactly? Could you point out? So you're looking for those stuff. You always encounter those kind of things with questions back to them, because that means they'll understand that you would have had reasons on why you've done it.
It's about meeting in the middle, I guess.
Yeah, so trying to find that balance. And oftentimes there are things that are like so vague that you don't really know what's right or wrong and they don't know if it's right or wrong until they see it. But at least if from the beginning you're trying to be very clear with what you're trying to do with planning. That's why in our process we would have done, let's say if it was a website thing, you would have done the discovery, you would have documented it, you would have had them approve it.
Very important, I think, just documentation. As throughout our projects, right?
Yeah.
It's always been like we learn progressively that documentation is like really important.
Because that becomes your guideline on the things that you're about to do. then there's the wireframe. Like even in design, we don't jump into visual design straight away, but there's this skeleton for you to have a look, is this the right thing or not? And so during those process, I guess you eliminate the risk of them not liking it at the end. Yeah.
I guess on top of that as well, design's quite subjective, so.
Yeah, it is very subjective. So you're trying to read their mind at the same time, because you may like the style, but they might not like it, or it might not work with their brand. You know, that's why in the design process there are mood boards, there are, you know, just research in general. All of that is just trying to understand what these people really want and what's going to work for their business. Okay. Maybe we'll move on to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do we manage client expectations?
In what sense? In the timeline sense, budget, or quality of work?
No, I think quality of work, like for us, is really need to be like up there, like up to our standards first, which I think like it's quite high already.
Yep.
Yeah, I think in terms of like timeline and well, I guess budget as well,
Yeah.
but it's more like a secondary thing. I think like budget.
I think. Well, I'm just trying to think of a certain situation that I think is what you're describing. Let's say there's this specific set of work that would generally take people, I don't know, like a month to 2 months to complete, but then in our timeline suddenly it's like 2 weeks. Is that the kind of thing that you're thinking of?
Well, I think like because well things happen, like doesn't matter, because in our really in our experience, right, most of the time, well, either development or design, like sometimes unexpected things happen, like, you know, either like we're not getting it correctly or things are missed. And
Gotcha.
you know, like the timeline sort of like drags on. Like how do we ensure that the client still actively, you know, like consciously know that because of this the timeline is actually, you know.
Yeah, so like my point of view to this is really just like how you deal with any type of relationship, whether it's a husband and wife type of relationship, or a girlfriend boyfriend type of relationship, or friends. It's really, I think the most important thing is transparency, because the reason why you've started this relationship or this project with this particular customer or brand is really because they trusted trusted you, they trusted us. That's why they've given us this project, and we're being, like I like to say it in a way like we're being rewarded for the project because then we win it, right?
Yeah.
And then I think from there it's a matter of maintaining that trust, because originally you would have had the trust, you would have gained their trust up to a certain level that they would like you to do this, right? So to me that's like, okay, it becomes a responsibility to deliver. And during that time, I guess the challenge is to maintain that trust. The way to do that, I really think, is just to openly communicate, and that's why I think about transparency. So in our systems, we try to update our clients, whether through depending on what the project is, but whether through a work in progress meeting weekly, or during crunch time, it might be on a daily basis. You do stand-ups with them, although it's like 15 minutes. Like it still helps. I think the most important thing for everyone, like for me as well, being in the office, say I'm the internal stakeholder, the most important thing for me is just to know where things are at as soon as possible. Because the thing is, it becomes a problem when I know of an issue that should have been flagged a lot earlier, but I only find out about this, say, closer to the deadline, that it's too late for me to do something about it. So I think the best way to deal with that is really try to be open in terms of the challenges, be ready to list down the type, for a specific challenge, what's causing it, and know as well how to deal with it. I guess that's the essence of doing a daily stand-up in an agile manner, right? Where you talk within your circle of teams, your core team, and then you understand, here are the things that I've done yesterday. Here are the things that I haven't done yet, but was scheduled to be done yesterday, but I haven't done it. Then, like, what's the problem? And then from there, know how to deal with the problem. What I need to do is, A, B, and C, for example. If you know that, if you know how to spell it out that way, then I think communication to and I guess the challenge is just to make sure that the client's in the loop, in that they know what's happening internally. So in an ideal process, I really like customers being part of the team rather than you're the client, I'm the service provider, but have them as part of the team. That way they're on the loop as well and really know and very embedded to what's happening inside. And I think if that's the case, then if there's something that requires for the deadline to be pushed back, that it's unavoidable for the best interest as well of the brand or the product itself, then I think transparency is definitely going to help. Yeah.
So they sort of like feel like they're part of the team, and
so they're being involved. They're being
together towards a creative goal.
Yeah, and not being left behind, and then like that we're in closed doors, that they don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is transparency, that they really know what we're working on, even up to the level of detail of, like some people could be quite pedantic where they really want to know what are these hours are being spent on. If we have that documented and backed up, like I think it's very important for them to have that transparency, so they don't even have to ask anymore. That's what our Jira systems and stuff like that would allow customers to do. Yeah. Anyway.
So my next question is about Relab itself. We specialize in a lot of web development work.
Yeah.
That to me is an industry that's changing constantly with technology and things like that. So my question is, how do we stay relevant in the industry and on top of that?
I think it's funny you asked that, because I mentioned this too. We're doing interviews at the moment, a couple of interviews, but that's one of the points that I mention a lot to our candidates. But it's really trying to stay young at heart. But what I mean by young at heart, I mean like we're generally young people in here. Or I'd like to think it that way. But we are young. Anyway, but what that means is you're a lot more open-minded, you're less structured in a way that you don't want to move on,
Stuck in your ways.
You're stuck in your ways.
Yeah.
That's how we stereotypically think about old people, right? You're stuck in your ways. You don't want to learn this, you don't want to learn that. You're a bit romantic about things that you don't want to move on.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what we're trying to avoid, because if you become like that, then you're stuck in your own ways, that you don't learn new ways of doing things, and you're not as open-minded as someone fresh in the industry who is just in the mindset of learning and hungry to evolve and I guess be different, all that stuff. I know it sounds cliche, but I think being different, willing to take the risk and break boundaries and not being stuck in our own ways is probably how we try and stay relevant. And one of the things that I'm really fascinated about is not to be a certain specialist in terms of the technology that we use, that we're being seen as a Drupal developer or a WordPress developer or a sidecoder developer. That's kind of not our game. What we try to do is, I guess the things that we could control the most at the moment is design and front-end technologies, because it's more versatile against whatever platforms that you use in a web development sense. So that's what we're focusing on. And I guess to answer your question, what I'm even looking forward to now is trying to try other experience technologies, whether it's voice, whether it's VR. I think voice and VR are kind of like the thing at the moment, well, at least in the next 3, 4, 5 years. That's why I guess I'm pushing for the team to try be excited about it as well. But that's one of the things that I'd like to do with all of us, trying to break boundaries and try other new things.
Is this the same thing for design as well?
Yeah, for design, I think it's depending on what experience we're focusing in. Like, I think using Sketch is probably the norm to do UI and UX design now. Like, we still use Photoshop a lot, so that's probably one of the things that we need to try and get out of the comfort zone a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like conventional design, if it's not just for web, like, do we follow trends?
Yeah, I think.
What do we try and?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. As a matter of fact, I talk about this with quite a lot of people, because what I've noticed is, and like, I mean, with all due respect, there's so many competitors out here in Melbourne. When I say competitors, obviously they're our peers in the industry, designers, developers. I think for us, it's more design rather than technical development. Yeah. And there's so many small studios out there that does really, really great work. When I say really great work, I have so much respect for these guys, because they do works that are like out of the norm. It's quite radical, and it's very experimental. It's just so cool as a designer. But from our experience as Relab grew, one of the challenges that I found as well is, if you wanted to grow, then you got to work with customers who has the budget, and that you're able to work on the bigger project. Oftentimes though, the customers who have the budget are, I guess, more commercial type of customers, or like a larger corporation type of customer, or a larger brand who's out there, and I would say more mainstream, like whatever mainstream means, but mainstream isn't like in the market, big. Those are the people who would allow us to grow because of the budget. Now we can take the other path, which is work with the smaller guys, the startups, who's willing to express themselves and want it to be different. Yeah. But you got to compromise for you to, and then you get to do all of the creative ones that you, all of the creative things that you wanted to do. But you're limited to a certain budget because that's what these guys can afford.
Yeah, quite artistic.
Yeah, they're quite artistic, and that's what they can afford to pay as well. Like, I don't know, it's a bit unfortunate, but sometimes the artistic way of doing things, just because it's different and radical, it may not be the proven thing in the market.
Yeah, I agree.
The proven thing is mainstream just because it works, and that's why these companies grow. So there's that balance that we're trying to find.
Being new, but at the same time, like knowing it will work. At the same time.
Yeah. That's why I'm fully aware that with most of the works that we do daily, it can be quite draining just because it's not too different. But as a designer or a creative, you want to do something that's out there and like really different, but you're not allowed to do that just because you know it's not going to be approved.
Still try.
Yeah.
Story about
we're ranting right now. Is this meant to be a vlog? But yeah, we're ranting. But I mean, then that's why I'm pushing for, you know, some time for us to spend on our own projects, because that's where we can experiment and go crazy, I guess. You know, we're trying to work out that time that we've been discussing, but yeah, I don't know, does that answer the question?
Yeah, it kind of leads on to my next one about how do we stay motivated.
Well, might as well ask that.
Oh yeah, well, my question is, how do you keep yourself and the team motivated throughout long projects or jobs that are repetitive? So
and we deal a lot with jobs that are repetitive, right?
Yeah.
Ironically, those are the jobs that keeps us alive, right? Just because those are like our daily thing, and it's a fixed contract and everything, so we kind of deal with that every single day. But I can understand, obviously, as I'm a designer myself as well, so coming from a design creative background, again, that's kind of like the thing that we deal with every day. How do we keep ourselves motivated without feeling bored? Because like without a doubt, you'll feel bored about it. And when you're bored, you're less motivated, and when you're less motivated, you're less happy. The less happy you are, it actually impacts your performance at the end of the day. So it's a good question, because for me as the owner of the business, that's what I'm trying to figure out every single day. Like, how do I keep Jake motivated coming to work? Because I know he's going to deal with this for the next 5 days and within this week. So I guess to me, it's something to look forward to, and looking at things in a bigger picture rather than tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? So, like, for me personally, how do I stay motivated when I know that I'm dealing with this every single day? Is that I know why I'm doing this every single day. Is because I have a larger, I guess, goal. Because I have a larger goal or a dream behind all of this that I know, or I'm fighting to achieve for the next 2 years. But for that to happen, I'll need to do this, I guess, micro steps along the way that may not be the most exciting, but I know it's taking me to that. An example is, let's say in the next 2 years, I want Relab to grow up to a certain level, and with the setup of team, but for me to be able to achieve that, I'll need to make some sacrifices along the way, which means it may just be me being bored on a certain job, you know. But because I can think of the long run and the end game, then I'm motivated because of that. Then I'll try to link it back to myself, and that's why I'm doing this. Then there's a sense of purpose. I think if there's a sense of purpose, then it changes your whole mindset. It's really just shifting a mindset to me. But if I was to look back at myself, say, I don't know, like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when I feel bored coming to work, just because I know what I'm going to deal with, then what I would try to do is do my own self-projects. That helps as a creative, something that I'm passionate about. Like if you're passionate about music and album covers and things like that, I would try and do things like that and spare some time to do it, if that's fulfilling for you. Unless you find it as another burden and then you go, oh, I'm just
well, sometimes it's hard to be constantly creative.
Yeah.
You're working and you've got to be creative. And then
yeah, I think something to look forward to helps to heal your boredom. Yeah. Just because, like, you know, for example, I've booked a ticket to travel to South Africa next 2 months, for example. That's something for me to look forward to, and I can be a little bit more excited. I think it's like planning your steps along the way to achieve that bigger goal is the way to do it.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you have a purpose in life and then there's that bigger picture goal, then that's what you're most excited about, because that's what you want to do at the end of the day. Then try to carve your way along to that. Yeah. Anything, Didi? Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I think it'll be my last one. But yeah, how do we approach like a project that has like, well, sometimes a bit unrealistic or / tight deadlines, and any strategy or I don't know, workarounds or that you can think of?
Yeah, well, these are things that happens a lot of times with us in Relab, and the reason why is because, and I guess if the viewers have been watching me rant all this while, it's really because, you know, one of the things that I say this to the team all the time, one of the things that I'm proud of is we can deliver our projects on time, if not faster than that, within budget, with the quality that's expected as well. Obviously, as we grow, that becomes more and more of a challenge, but we try to do that and figure out a way to constantly do that still. So if the timeline's unrealistic, then and that happens a lot where a client would come to us and say, hey, we need this tomorrow, right? We need this tomorrow. Like, could we do this or not? And this is just me, and one of my weaknesses is it's hard for me to say no. It's hard for me to say no because I'd like to impress people, right? That's one of the weaknesses that sometimes shoots myself in the foot. But I guess learning from the past, what I would try and understand first is whether we have the resources and the capacity to do that, whether we're capable or not. That's very important. So for you as a project manager, you would try and understand what the skill sets are that we have internally in the team at Relab. So we have, you know, a few designers, a few developers, what are their workload at the moment, and whether they're able to do this type of requirement or not. If the answer is yes, then the next question to me is just, where does this sit in the priority? Could the other things that these guys are working on get, I guess, pushed back a little bit, that we focus on this urgent one that's coming for tomorrow? And is that okay, and how does that impact our relationship and with the customers that's going to get pushed back a little bit? If we think that's okay, and if they openly understand that, oh yeah, that's fine, we could hold that for another day or so, then we will manage to squeeze this job in. So it's a matter of trying to find that spot within our time blocks, whether this super urgent one that suddenly comes in all of a sudden can be squeezed in or not, for us to be able to help and deliver this for the customer. And then if there is, then yeah, we just do it and we manage to deliver. But if not, and let's say we can't do it, then obviously we'd have to be transparent again to the customer and say, "Look, sorry, we can't do this because we don't have the resources to do it, or it's not within our capacity, or it's something that we are not the expert in." You know, there's always reasons why we can't do it. And the best thing that we can do, if we know with, you know, people within our network or other companies within our network, is just to provide them a solution and contact, say, "But we know these guys who might be able to help you, why not give them a call?" And, you know, things like that. At least you're not leaving the customer there by themselves in the dark. But if we can help in any type of way, whether even just referring them to someone else, then I think that will be appreciated. Yeah. Anything else?
I think my questions have been answered, the remaining ones.
Okay.
So.
Well, anyway, I hope you guys enjoy it, but these are like a typical conversation that we have, other than obviously like personal things that happens, but hopefully you find some sort of a value out of this. But essentially, I think working with other people, whether it's your team members or whether it's your customers, it can be very, very challenging. And even like dealing with yourself, like you talking to yourself about, you know, am I doing this the right way? Am I doing the right thing or not? And all of that stuff. But it's important. I like to have this open conversation type of culture within us, especially within the small team environment, that it allows us to, I guess, bring something onto the table of a certain situation that you're not mostly comfortable with. And then we can discuss it as a team. Hopefully, like, you'll be able to get something out of that. But anyway, let's leave that there, and hopefully you have a great one. It's a very, very windy day here in Melbourne, but we're gonna go through it. All right, thanks.